Whew, Mary, you are the last call, the last session today.
Um, Man, it's so hot today too. So I don't know if you guys are keeping cool out there in LA, but it's super hot out here. But should I begin?
You're in San Diego, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, right. Yeah, so today this is the final workshop in the series, Push Reset to 2020, Close More Sales Deals on LinkedIn. Mary Burhani, she's been doing a great job these entire 2 days, providing insight on how to close deals through LinkedIn. And Mary, I will let you take it from here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you again for having me. Super excited to wrap up with the last webinar. So this was a 3-part series. This webinar will be mostly a recap of part 1 and 2. Part 1 was how to optimize your LinkedIn profile. Part 2 was navigating through Sales Navigator. And so now we're going to put it all together with this series. So a little bit about myself. My name is Mary Burhani. I am the owner of Mary Consulting Services. We're a sales and social media marketing firm. The reason why I'm doing this presentation is because I've had some success on LinkedIn with about 12,000 followers. So the history behind that is I started off as a junior sales representative and was having difficulties, getting access to decision makers at large companies. And so LinkedIn allowed me to kind of get past the gatekeepers and speak to the decision makers directly. So this was back in 2016. So through the success of LinkedIn, I was able to sell over $1 million in products and services to companies like Pop Chips, Pacific Premier Bank, and San Diego Girl Scouts. Went to UCLA for undergrad and grad school, and then got my MBA at San Diego State in 2015, and been pretty successful in sales throughout my career, thanks to LinkedIn. So today's agenda is pretty much what I mentioned. I'll be recapping what we discussed. I'll talk to you about a little bit of some case studies where I did have some success and traction on LinkedIn, and then we'll close off with a Q&A. Throughout this webinar, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to put it in the chat. I will answer your questions at the end, though, just because it's hard to navigate and answer questions. So to recap, most people tend to have challenges with LinkedIn based on not being too familiar with the format. They have a tendency to want to prospect and sell, but don't know where to start on LinkedIn. And then they were having difficulties targeting the right customers. And so I pretty much just made a 5-step a plan to help simplify what to do on LinkedIn in terms of B2B selling. So this webinar is specifically towards B2B selling. But of course, you could use it for job opportunities and growing your followers as well. So step 1 was setting a goal. Step 2 was optimizing your profile. Step 3 was to connect with as many people as possible, and then post and engage with followers as well. So not only are you posting, but you're also replying to other people's posts, putting comments, likes, and then messaging folks directly using InMail or messaging them directly if they're a first connection. So the goal of all this is to grow your followers. Optimizing your profile helps you gain more credibility because now they know who you are. So the items on the bottom are pretty much the tools that I talked about. So like Canva would be a tool that's useful to optimize your profile. So you could go ahead and create a LinkedIn banner. So Canva has pre-made templates, the dimensions are already set, and you could go ahead and use that for your banner on your LinkedIn page. I mentioned how this was prime real estate on LinkedIn, so you could do really cool things like putting your website on your banner, as well as maybe your email address if you don't have a website. Also, we talked about connected, which helps you automate your messages. And so you can, set kind of similar to HubSpot, where you set your, email 1, introduction, email 2. This is what we're going to send out to our prospects. But in this sense, you're building your LinkedIn messages. And so once the prospect goes ahead and replies, then you could take over and start talking to them. That will save you a lot of time by automating some of those messaging features. I talked about Zoom Info, where you could get your prospecting list through Zoom Info, as well as Seamless, which integrates pretty well with LinkedIn and LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And then speaking of Sales Navigator, we also talked about integrations within your CRM system. So making sure you talk to executives at your company to make sure whatever CRM you move towards, it has the capability of integrating with Sales Navigator. And then you could set up alerts in Sales Navigator, and then pay attention to the home page, which will let you know of any upcoming changes or updates within a company. And of course, we talked about InMail. So InMail, you could message people that are your second and third degree connections without waiting for them to connect with you first. You kind of bypass that whole process. But we also talked about how if they don't connect with you in general, you may want to use your InMail sparingly, because the chances are, depending on the content that you're sending them, is they might not reply. So I gave different suggestions on how to do that. So I know that was a lot of information, but that pretty much summarized webinar 1 and 2. And so today we're going to talk about specific case studies of how I personally closed $1 million in sales. And so number 1 is I pretty much had a goal. I set a daily goal of posting a video. I didn't really care what video I posted, as long as it's within 30 seconds to 2 minutes long were the videos. That included things like promoting the company that I was working at, or projects that I was involved in. So I would do different videos, like walking up to a client site and maybe doing a kickoff meeting or onboarding project. So I was selling IT services, so that were things that I documented. I also gave sales tips through LinkedIn. I realized branding yourself through LinkedIn was important, so I made a shift from like broadcasting or advertising the companies that I worked at, to more branding myself and trying to let my followers know who I am, outside of trying to sell them something. So I would try to position myself as a sales professional, and so I would give sales tips to my followers. Other inspirational ideas, and again, my whole goal was, I just have to post something, and then once I do that, then I would feel a little bit more comfortable with being in front of the camera. And then once I did that, then I could really focus on the content later. But the goal was just getting comfortable with it first. And so I would do different videos, like workout videos as well, just so to figure out like, hey, what is my audience like? The workout videos, we had a couple of questions from the last webinar that said, hey, should we post personal on LinkedIn? And my response was, it depends on your goal. So for me, at that time, I was very interested in fitness, doing well in sales, and trying to, at the time, be an IT expert. So the workout piece of it was just like a small window of who I am. And it did actually get a lot of great responses. And I did get a lot of messages when I stopped posting videos. People were like, hey, what happened to your videos? And by the way, they weren't professional videos. That was the whole point, is that it was done directly from me to the audience to, again, build that trust with my potential followers and prospects. Something else I did is that I informed my network of life milestones that were happening. Something that I always mention to people, like in terms of consulting of what they should do on their LinkedIn profile, is put in your birth date. You know, where it gives you the option of, do you want to put in your birthday? That was something that was important for me, because I was hundreds of. Oh, could you guys still hear me? Oh, okay, I just want to make sure you guys could hear me. So just.
Your microphone's a little bit low.
Okay, I think you guys can hear me, but I'm gonna keep going. If you can't hear me, let me know. I just got a notification saying your speaker is not working, so I didn't know if you could hear me. Okay, cool. And so, so putting my birth date on my LinkedIn profile really helped, because people would reach out to me and wish me a happy birthday, and that presented itself with a sales opportunity to speak to them about whatever I had going on at that time, whether it's simply introducing myself or reconnecting with my connections that, you know, I haven't talked to a year ago. So I did notice a pattern. I would get messages from folks on an annual basis, and then I would thank them, letting them know I appreciate that they're always wishing me a happy birthday. And then I also did that in return for them. And so the reason I'm mentioning this is, if you're a bit shy to connect with people on LinkedIn, the birthday or the work anniversary is something that opens up dialogue. So I've been pretty successful using that to open dialogue with folks. Vacation videos, I've done that before too. That was something fun. A lot of executives like to travel, so that was, again, another conversation starter. And then I've posted articles, and then talked about events. So like, if I had an open house at my company, I was, posting a video about come to the open house. If I had a volunteer event, like for instance, my organization, MCS Empowerment Coalition for Leaders of Color, I would announce through either a video post or manually messaging folks to attend the event. What I find is, when you're sharing like valuable information, free advice, that kind of stuff, and helping to build your network, and actually asking your connections, like, what are they interested in, and how could I help you, and how could I be of service, that led to a lot more connections than me sending them a copy and paste message on LinkedIn. So, we did talk about those tools. Hootsuite was another tool that helps you plan, especially if you're doing the, 1-year challenge that I did. So I did daily videos, and I had an accountability partner, and we just made sure that we were posting videos. So if you want to do that, you could use Hootsuite to help automate some of that. So recording your content early through a video creator app like InShot or Clips would help you do that. Clips has a great subtitle feature. I preferred InShot. It was a little bit easier for me to manage. And then I would put music on the overlay music with the video footage, and that seemed to help. And then I would do like a 5-second opening where it's my name, and a 5-second closing at the end with my photo and my email address. So that's pretty much how I did the videos. We already talked about Canva, and I think someone just threw a link in the chat for Canva. That's just huge in terms of designing posts, whether it's videos or your banners and memes. It's super helpful. I also use WordSwag when I'm in a pinch. WordSwag is pretty easy to also post memes. This slide was just showing, step 2, I use Sales Navigator a lot. And so this was a preview of how I would search on Sales Navigator. So geography, I targeted people in Southern California, relationships that were 2nd degree and 3rd degree connections. And then depending on the industry that I was targeting, I would go ahead and filter those folks out. And then I would target C-level executives, and then I would hit search. So this helped me build my prospecting list, especially when I was kind of stuck on, okay, which company should I target? I would go directly to Sales Navigator, and then it made my life easier because it just gives me the list of companies. After I get list of leads, not companies. You could also look up companies, but once I got those list of leads, what I would do is either manually put in the leads on a CRM system, so whether it's HubSpot or Dynamics. And then if I purchased leads from Zoom Info or Seamless, then I would just import those lead lists into the CRM system or get a marketing team member to go ahead and do that for me. And then I would start, documenting their names and then putting connected on LinkedIn and then tracking the activities related to that lead until I would book a meeting. And then obviously if it generated a meeting, then I would open up an opportunity, and then I would follow and document that until I closed the deal. So that was step 2. So this was a deeper preview into, again, webinar 2. You noticed there was 8.5 thousand connections or potential prospects on the lead search. And then we talked about the importance of targeting those who've changed jobs within the last 90 days, because they would be the folks that are interested in, in new vendors or new relationships. And then also, if you burned any relationships in the past, this is an opportunity to go ahead and start fresh. And then we talked about how you could add those searches in your saved searches, and then set up alerts as well to stay on top of them. And so in terms of Sales Navigator, we talked about Sales Navigator Team, Sales Navigator Enterprise. These are the ones that integrate to your CRM. So as stated before, I always make sure the CRM system that I'm using does integrate with LinkedIn, because like I said, 90% of my prospecting comes from LinkedIn. A small percentage is from inbound leads. And then others are through like referrals. And so, yeah, we talked about Seamless, we talked about Zoom, and then the connected app, which I mentioned in the overview in the beginning, which allows you to automate messages and kind of simplify your job that way. Okay, so in terms of my sales cadence, so Zoom Info, whether I was using that to import the leads directly into CRM, that would be pretty much the first step. Or I would take a look at my current CRM and see what leads are on there. Then I would build some kind of call plan. So using the CRM system to build activity lists, and then look at my notes from the previous day. So come up with some kind of call plan. A rule of thumb is when you're starting new and you're really trying to penetrate an account and it's just taking a long time, you probably want to do about 75 calls a day, obviously not to the same account, but to your lead list. That's why having like a strong prospecting, or like a hefty prospecting list of like the 8,000 leads is a great start, because you're probably going to be making a ton of phone calls. Email, and then once you're a little bit more familiar with that industry, or once you're getting more traction, I slow it down to 25 calls 25 calls per day, just because it's just very tedious to do all those cold calls. Now that you have LinkedIn and Sales Navigator, that's the whole point, to reduce the cold calling piece of it. You want more warm calls. And so having an email cadence is also important. And so when I make those 25 calls, I'm also sending out 25 emails to those folks. And then I did want to list off downloading your LinkedIn contacts. So we talked about how I have 12,000 LinkedIn followers. If you go on your settings section, you could download the list of your followers or connections, and then get their email addresses. And so that's another way you could do it. You could import that information to the CRM and then follow up with them as well. So LinkedIn messaging cadence, that was something that I would create on OneNote or some kind of like Word document, and I would have different messaging for different occasions. So let's say it's Valentine's Day, maybe a themed message for that, or let's say it's the end of the fiscal year, messaging for that, or maybe if I'm selling cybersecurity services or COVID-19 related material, you would go ahead and create those templates ahead of time. And then so when you start messaging your prospects, you pull the proper message that you need to that prospect. So if it's an introductory email, I would go to my introductory email section and then, copy and paste that message and add a custom, greeting or some kind of call to action that relates to what I'm talking to the prospect about. So if you guys are interested in learning more about that, you could shoot me a message like offline, and then we could talk about that, because that's a whole that could take a long time, just talk about the process, the sales cadence, but just wanted to give you just an overview of what I do. And then I've also done drop by visits, lunches, networking events, and gifts. So because of COVID-19, you would have to tweak some of those items. So now I do a lot of virtual networking events, and then follow up with them after, or I do these kinds of workshops and webinars, and that's another way to get in front of your prospect. You don't always have to sell what your company is doing. You could create value and build presentation decks that are helping whatever that population you're trying to target. If you're trying to target healthcare companies, build some webinars, or attend a networking event where you decide to join a panel and talk about that thing where you're expert about. And then so that's pretty much how I do it now, just because you got to find different ways to target your customer. And so that's the whole point of this. LinkedIn is going to help you do that. So if you start this early and you start your LinkedIn strategy now, you'll be pretty set for 2021 when we're meeting in person. But obviously you want to start having these conversations and close deals today as well. And so, the more time you invest in Sales Navigator and optimizing their profile, the more successful you'll be. And then so something else in terms of step 4 was building the relationship first and resisting selling. So with LinkedIn, it does keep a record of all the messages you're sending folks. I try to make sure the first interaction is either a general introduction, or letting them know that I'm just connecting in order to be of value or learn from them, whatever they have going on. Again, it just depends on the prospect and my goal of what I'm up to. But I do avoid trying to sell them at the first message, just because that message, one, it turns them off, and so you're not going to get a reply, and two, that message history will be there. So if you're always bugging them and sending them spam messages, they're going to see that and they're going to realize like, oh, okay, this person is really trying to get me to sell something, but now they're changing their strategy and now they're asking me general personal stuff to, icebreaker questions. But you really did yourself a disservice by selling in the beginning and then trying to backtrack. So one thing I always did or try to do is try not to sell up front. Another thing I did is I engaged with my followers a lot and followed their journey as well. So I wasn't just using the platform to consume. It was also like adding something to the community as well. So I message people that I'm following. I reply to their comments. I got a tour, and the photo is referencing a tour that I was able to get of the Netflix studios, just from connecting with someone who is the head of security at or cybersecurity at Netflix. And so that was a conversation that came you know, through, that just organically happened. I've also met Jayden Harps as well of Nesby, and so connected with him on LinkedIn and invited him to an office grand opening party, and so that led for with a great relationship with him, which led me to be the vice president of Nesby for a year, and so that was all through LinkedIn, and being open to connecting with someone and also meeting them in person, obviously in a professional environment, in a safe environment. And so that was my experience with the Netflix tour. It was pretty much, hey, if I'm in LA, would love to meet with you. And he was like, yeah, sure, come. And, put your name down through the security, register your card and everything. And then was able to get a tour, checked out, where everybody was set up, as well as the kitchen and all this stuff. It was pretty cool. And then another example was the CEO of Pacific Capital, connected with him followed him on LinkedIn, and then messaged him, and he was presenting like financial presentations and doing different things. And so I just asked him if I could get a copy of a presentation that he did of a webinar. And then I got an email directly. And so those were like, examples of creative ways to connect with people. But it was always with like genuinely being interested in what others were doing. So, sometimes that could be hard to, kind of feel like, if you're not an extrovert and I'm an extrovert and I'm a people person, so that's pretty simple for me. But I know it could be difficult sometimes, especially when you're investing time in people and if it's awkward. But yeah, if you approach it with like, hey, these people, even though they're executives, they're approachable, they're your friends, that tends to make it a lot easier. And then when you're open about who you are and what you're trying to do, and not manufacturing like a relationship, but if you genuinely care and want to have a real relationship, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship as a friend, because they're part of your network, that's been like the secret sauce, because people can kind of read through like if you're not genuine, and so you always want to start off by like just tapping into that and realizing like, hey, what's the reason I'm connecting with them? Is it coming from a genuine place? If it is, you'll find it's a lot easier than it sounds to connect with almost anybody on LinkedIn. And I pretty much connect with a lot of executives, and I want to say like 90% of them connect with me back, and 90% of them want to have some kind of conversation with me, because I've done the groundwork of sharing who I am, posting videos, and trying to be as authentic as I can. All right. So, and I would love to hear any success stories from you guys too, of how has your experiences been on LinkedIn, and any challenges where, you're trying to kind of forge those relationships and having difficulties. I would love to share and hear from you guys about any experiences that you have through chat, and we could talk about it at the end. Yeah, number 5 is persistence. Just super persistent on LinkedIn when it comes to building relationship and establishing a business relationship. So an example that I put on here is when I, connected with the CIO of Crow Holdings. Built that relationship about 2.5 years ago, and we just could not find any like opportunities to work together. And I was in San Diego at the time, and so it's always difficult to do business with people long distance sometimes. And this is before people wanted to jump on a Zoom call. And so what I did is I pretty much just let him know, like, hey, I'm coming to Dallas for a wedding. I know we've been trying to coordinate, but here are my availabilities where I'm going to be in town. I could either see you that Friday when I fly in, or that Monday. He selected the Monday, and so had my luggage and everything, and went up those stairs in the front of in the front of that picture of the building. Amazing building, and it's just an amazing site. But anyway, so went there, got a whole tour of the facility, brought up the project that we were trying to work on, had my engineers on standby. It led to an opportunity, like having an engineer on the call, scoping out the project that they wanted, which then led us to partner together. And then he's been a great friend of mine and has been able to refer me 3 other deals outside of working with his company. So that's all through LinkedIn. And yeah, I know 3 years, that's a long time to close a deal, but that's just the nature of networking and prospecting and LinkedIn. Is you plant the seeds today, and then next thing you know, you end up getting 3 referrals when you were just looking for that one deal. So that was just an example of just something to get you motivated to be persistent. I also have a couple other stories, like the CEO of Endeavor Bank. Before I reached out to him, realized he was really into craft beer. And so based on that, it led to a conversation, and he was an Aztec, I'm an Aztec. Back to optimizing your LinkedIn profile, how it's important to list off, the college that you went to and highlight your achievements. He knew almost everything about me from my LinkedIn profile. So it was a pretty easy conversation. He, gave me a couple of comments about my profile and wanted to learn about me. And then I was like, hey, I could come by your office and drop off some craft beer because I know you like craft beer. And so that led to a meeting with him and his VP. So those are just examples of just being open to have conversations with people, and whether you do business with them that day. It's just all about networking and then coming into the meeting with an open mind. I generally, of course I like researched his company and had everything ready just in case it led to a business deal. But the goal of it was really just to come on site, meet him, and take it from there. Similar stories with Pacific Premier Bank. And then, knew the CIO of Pacific Premier Bank through LinkedIn. That took, I believe it took 6 months of speaking with him at a different bank that he worked at. And then remember when I said, put those alerts for job changes? Well, I received the alert that he changed his job and was now working at Pacific Premier Bank. And so shot him a message on LinkedIn and asked him, hey, I noticed you're at a new bank now. And then he was like, I knew you were going to reach out to me. I'm like, yeah, I need your new number now and your new email address, which led to opportunities with that firm. So that was like a couple of different projects, working with that CIO and just building a great relationship. With PIH Health and Allscripts, that also was through LinkedIn. Met with I believe he was a CIO. Yeah, he was a CIO of the company. And so again, drove all the way to LA, and this could have been nothing or it could have been something. So again, I do recommend qualifying your prospects first before making the drive. But at that point, I did something called clustering. So I clustered all my meetings together. So I knew, hey, this is a drop by, but I clustered other meetings while I was in LA. And so it wasn't like a waste of a drive for me. Anyways, went on site, spoke to the CIO, had a okay conversation, learned a little bit about their infrastructure, and then came back to my office and then he went completely cold on me, and I was like, oh my God, what happened with this deal and what's going on? And so it was just persistent. And then 3 months later, randomly, he sent me a message saying, hey, I have this RFP deal. Is this something that you're interested in? Ended up telling him, yes, I'm interested. And then we ended up closing that deal as well. So that was like a pretty cool success story. So that took about, I want to say 6 months from the time I met him. And then the Pacific Premier Bank was also about 6 months. And so these are just, you know, case studies of talking to people on LinkedIn and approaching them with an open mind, and not necessarily ready to sell at that moment, but letting them know who you are. And then, you know, I came top of mind because I would follow up a lot. So just to put it all together, before you actually start using LinkedIn in terms of messaging, just have your goal in mind, and then based on that goal, optimize your profile. I always connect with as many people as possible, but before you do that, set your intentions on who to connect with first, and then start posting and engaging with your connections, and grow your followers. So that completes webinar 3. I thank you guys for your time. I think for this one, maybe we could have more of a conversation as well, since we have a couple minutes with you guys. But if you did want to reach me, you could email me at mary@maryconsultingservices.com. I also have an event happening October 21st with the MCS Empowerment Coalition for Leaders of Color. We'll have 3 panelists. One is the CEO of the Asian Business Association, so he'll be there talking about his entrepreneurial journey. And we meet every 3rd Wednesday of the month virtually. And then I also sell digital courses on topics like LinkedIn. So you could see that on my website, maryconsultingservices.com/digital store. But yeah, so like, I think for this one, maybe we could have more fun than the other webinars where I think I was going a little bit over, but does anyone have comments?
Let me ask a question. Has anyone closed any deals through LinkedIn or tried to close deals through LinkedIn before? Someone said no. No. Well, I hope everything that that Mary provided was insightful. I really like this session because someone says, what do you say at a drop-in meeting?
Yeah, so for the drop-in meeting, so I only do drop-in meetings if they really don't want to meet with me. So I'll say like, hey, so I've done a couple things. So I've actually Googled companies before and looked at like, okay, what's a neighboring restaurant nearby? And then I could give you an example. There's like a big company that I was meeting with, and I noticed Phil's Barbecue was right by that company. And so that was my opening line, like, oh my, aren't you guys located next to Phil's Barbecue? And, you know, and I literally booked that meeting that same day. So I called him at like 9 a.m. and mentioned Phil's Barbecue. He was like, all of us at work, we love Phil's and we're always trying to find excuses. I'm like, well, lunch is at 12 p.m. I'll be in the area. Why don't we just meet at Phil's? And so that was literally one of the most coolest meetings, just because we were there to eat Phil's Barbecue. And then of course they're going to ask you, wait, who are you again? And why are you even here? So be ready with some information about your company, but also don't make the whole conversation about your company and how you can help them. So that was like early on in my career. So I would do things like that. But later on in my career, I think I just spoke about the projects and like, hey, I've helped this company. And then they'll say, Mary, I don't have anything today. And then I would let them know, well, hey, you know, there's a ton of companies like mine. I just want to be top of mind. It doesn't hurt to network now. You know, I would love to stop by. And then when I would stop by, I only had one person ever so I dropped off something. I was like, hey, I'm going to stop by, drop off something. That one person was the only one who said, thank you for that thing. And then I left the office. But almost every other meeting, when I would drop by, they would actually have me sit in the conference room, tell me about their company. Obviously, you're asking the right qualifying questions, so you're going to follow you know, your process. My process was always, you know, ask about the organization, ask if they used a vendor like mine before, ask about, you know, their role at the company. Then I would talk about, hey, tell me about any challenges that you have with whatever you're trying to sell them. And then based on that, it really steered the conversation and then led to some kind of meeting. Again, I'm not trying to sell at that first meeting, but I'm also prepared if it leads to that. So those are just my examples. So the types of gifts that I would give would be pretty much like the craft beer and wine. I did that. I feel like I did that like 2 years ago, and it was super creative at the time. I think now a lot of other vendors do that. But I remember like people really liked craft beer drop-offs. And so that was something that I did a lot of. I was thinking about maybe like at the time when COVID was happening, like giving out care gifts. But then I realized that wasn't like the best approach. But I'm always about experimenting. So you don't know until you just try. So I would try different gifts. When I flew out to Dallas, just talking about gifts, at the airport, I got, you know, one of those globes that said San Diego. And it was like snow, but it was like beach and sand in it. And it was so crazy because that was only $10, but one of the decision makers at that company really loved that globe. And I was like, dang it, I should have like brought more of those globes. So that was just random. So I've done globes, I've done mugs, especially if I'm visiting a prospect from out of town. So gifting is pretty cool. Okay, and then Karen says her mentor uses LinkedIn often for lead generation. Yeah, it's literally the #1 trusted social network. 3 out of 4 decision makers are on LinkedIn at these companies. So I highly recommend and Karen, what are you using LinkedIn for? I'm curious. I'm wondering what you're selling and what industry you're in. But you
Karen works for Athena.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, but I'm not entirely too sure her role. I know she does a lot at Athena San Diego, and
yeah,
I'm pretty, yeah.
I think the biggest I think misconception is you have to be a salesperson to use LinkedIn to sell to people, but that's really not it. I've gotten job opportunities through LinkedIn where I would find the CEO. Again, you could use Sales Navigator. You find the decision maker, and then I would message the decision maker directly and tell them, hey, these are my skill sets. Here's my resume. Are you interested in a job? Do you have any openings? And they would usually introduce me to someone in their network through LinkedIn, like the HR person, or, hey, Mary, email me here. So now I'm doing 2 things. Now I have a CEO's email address directly, whether I do take that job or I don't take that job, I'm just expanding my network. And, you know, that's the whole point of LinkedIn, is to be super connected to everybody and get to know people. And you never know when you might be able to either, and I don't mean use them in a negative way, but you don't know when you might be able to tap into them. And then also, what if you stumble upon other people that need something and you want to be of service, and then you could connect them to your network. So that's huge for me, especially people who are out of the job. I get a lot of people who are out of the job looking to get a new job. And I've been successful there too. So what I would do there is, I would be talking to a decision maker. They didn't quite update their profile yet. It still says they have, they're employed and they're an executive at a company. And then I message them. They're like, "Oh, Mary, wish I could help you. I just got laid off today." That happened a lot. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And then, so what I would do at that point is I would try to figure out how I could help that executive get a job. And so that was something else that I would do. And I would let them know, hey, I'm having a grand opening event that's happening at my company. There's going to be, these types of companies coming, Sharp Healthcare, Scripps, whoever, come and join the event. And, I can't guarantee anything's going to happen, but hey, at least you'll be familiar with our company and you'll get to network. And those people were very thankful for that. So back to the intentions and like not just being a taker, but also a giver. Those things add up. Okay, so agreed. I'm also looking out for roles. I know you're looking for new roles. Awesome. Shauna says, do you give a package of papers info on your company when you first connect? So when I was selling in staffing services, I had a manual that gave all the latest salaries. And so like, what you should be paid for. So that was like something that I used, like, hey, I have the newest guide that came out to help you benchmark what you're offering your current employees. And so that was the thing that people wanted. And of course I could have I could have just sent them an electronic copy, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to meet them in person. And so I would print it out and then bring it in person. And I've done a whole bunch of other things too, in terms of I have to be there present to have this conversation, whether I could have just sent it online, or a proposal like, hey, I'm going to come and review the proposal together. And if they're busy, we do it over happy hour. I've done that a couple times as well. And that's always fun because it's just, again, it doesn't feel too businessy. And that's what a lot of my accounts liked, where it didn't feel like I'm always coming on site. I'm always bugging them about something and asking them to do something or go through this PowerPoint deck. They didn't want to deal with that. They just wanted to, have lunch or whatever. And then you squeeze in the business conversation and get next steps that way. That just worked for me, but everybody's different. Do you give a package of papers when you first connect? Do you get nervous? If so, how do you deal with it? Yeah, I remember. So I was selling IT services, and I wasn't technical. So my role was account executive, and I remember I wanted my CEO to come with me to the meeting, and I think that was my second meeting. That tends to happen sometimes when people are too busy. And so I just try to get an engineer on standby. And so the meeting ended up being 6 different IT leads. So there was 2 decision makers, and it was, I think, like 4 technical people, but everybody was technical for some weird reason. And it was me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how am I going to do this meeting? So pretty much what I do is I try to, back to the whole list of how I structure my meetings. I, set the agenda. I talk about the talking points. I introduce what my company does. They introduce what they do. And so I'm doing more listening. And then I would have an engineer on standby ready to take on the technical calls. If I didn't have the engineer on standby, then I would just jot down the notes needed and then gather with them for the next step. And so, yeah, I would get nervous, but it was just like practice. So I would do that all the time, where I would come on site, they throw something at me, I'm stuck. And then after a while, you do it so many times, and then you become an expert at your field, and then it becomes super easy. But the whole goal is you just have to, again, see them as your peers and not, these big bad executives. And so that's how I did it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was really insightful. Thank you so much. Because, working in tech myself, selling diversity in tech. Sometimes when you're in the room with actually people that do the tech work, trying to convince them to like support like, programs that you're creating and trying to communicate tech to them could be kind of difficult sometimes. So thank you for sharing insight on that. If no one has any more questions, Mary, I want to say thank you for presenting this 3-part series. It was really great. I'm definitely going to go back and rewatch all of them.
Yeah, I know webinar 2, I don't know what your feedback was about webinar 2, but I know webinar 2 is a lot. That could probably been broken up into 2. But yeah, the sales navigator is just really awesome.
No, that was really great. And I'm going to go back and rewatch that one specifically because I do have a sales navigator and I need to optimize it better. I mean, I'm paying for it. So
Exactly. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, connect with me on LinkedIn, and then it's maryconsultingservices.com for future events. But I do want to say thank you, Elizabeth. This has been a pleasure, and I look forward to next steps with you after this event. So
awesome.
Okay,
Thank
awesome.
you.
Bye, guys.